It didn't happen all at once, not in some dramatic explosion of reinvention or a sudden, bold step into a new life. It happened quietly, almost slyly, the way a trickle of water wears down stone until one day you notice a hollow where there wasn't one before. I didn't even mean for it to be cheating at first. But I suppose that's what it became, cheating my way into a world where I didn't really belong, at least not in the beginning. The group was magnetic. Everyone in it seemed to glow in ways that the rest of us didn't. They were beautiful without trying too hard, funny without ever stumbling over their punchlines, and confident in a way that didn't feel forced. It was as if the air around them shimmered, as though they were all living inside a story where they were the main characters and the rest of us were background extras. I envied them, watched them from the outside, listened for their inside jokes, and felt the dull ache of wanting to be included. At first, I hovered. I lingered near the places they gathered, laughed a little louder when one of them cracked a joke, threw in comments that I hoped would be picked up, repeated. I became skilled at pretending I just happened to be in the same spot. But hovering isn't enough to break into a group like that. You have to tilt the odds. You have to bend the rules. That's when I learned the unspoken art of social climbing. The first rule: mirror them. I started small, picking up on the phrases they used, the rhythm of their laughter, the way they carried themselves like they belonged everywhere they went. I borrowed bits and pieces of their language until it began to sound like mine. If one of them had a favorite band, suddenly I was listening too. If a new show was trending among them, I just happened to binge watch it over the weekend. I wasn't lying, not really, more like editing myself, polishing the parts that didn't fit, amplifying the parts that could. The second rule: no secrets without ever having been told them. I watched their Instagram stories, pieced together patterns, remembered details no one thought I noticed. When one of them mentioned in passing that they hated pineapple on pizza, I filed it away. Later, when the subject came up again, I was ready with a laugh, a perfectly timed agreement, as if we were already aligned. It wasn't genuine connection, but it was something that looked close enough from the outside. The third rule: insert yourself where no one expects you to be. That one took courage. They were going to a concert, and I found out through a tagged photo. I bought a ticket, showed up, pretended it was a coincidence. I played it cool, though my pulse raced as I walked up to them, pretending to be just as surprised as they were. "No way, you're here too?" That moment was my foot in the door, and once it was there, I didn't let it slip. Slowly, it worked. The lines between outsider and one of us blurred. I wasn't on the fringe anymore. I was in the photos, tagged in the jokes, included in the plans. The laugh I'd once faked became real, because now they laughed back. And yet, even as I settled into the group, I felt a strange unease. Because deep down, I knew I'd climbed in through the window, not walked through the front door. There were moments when I wondered if they could tell. Did they ever notice the way I studied them too closely, or the way I always seemed to have just the right answer, the right taste, the right comment? Did they ever suspect I'd been stitching myself into their fabric thread by thread? The thing about unspoken rules is that they're fragile, and once broken, they can unravel everything. But they didn't push me out. They let me stay. Maybe because I played my role well, maybe because by then I had become part of the group's rhythm. And maybe, just maybe, because everyone cheats a little when it comes to belonging. We all bend ourselves to fit into places we want to be. Some of us are just more deliberate about it. And so, I became one of them. Or at least close enough that no one questioned it anymore. But I sometimes wonder if they truly accepted me, or if I had only tricked them, and in the process, tricked myself. The deeper I sank into the group, the more I began to understand the subtler layers of belonging, the things no one ever says aloud but everyone silently agrees upon. There were hierarchies, invisible ones, that decided who was allowed to speak the most, who could tease whom, and who got to decide what counted as funny. It wasn't a democracy, it was a kingdom, and I hadn't just wandered into it. I had studied the map, learned the language, and slipped in through the cracks. I found myself constantly alert, as though walking a tightrope. Every laugh I gave had to be measured. Too loud and I seemed desperate, too soft and I seemed dismissive. Every story I told had to be polished until it gleamed. The truth was boring. Exaggeration was survival. I remember once telling them about a trip I'd taken, a vacation that in reality had been a forgettable blur of cheap hotels and long bus rides. But when I told it to them, I painted it in vivid strokes: the adventure, the chaos, the hilarious disasters that made me seem like the kind of person who lived life fully. They laughed, eyes wide, and for the first time, I felt them lean toward me instead of me leaning toward them. That night, I walked home buzzing with adrenaline, but also with shame. I had lied, or at least reshaped the truth so much it might as well have been a lie. Yet no one questioned it. They clapped me on the back and said, "You're wild." And I let them believe it. The unspoken rules became clear the longer I played the game. Rule 4. Never outshine the leader. Every group has one, the sun around which all the others orbit. In our case, it was Jonah. Charismatic, sharp, effortlessly cool. He didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. He only had to glance sideways and the whole room seemed to tilt in his direction. Everyone adored him, and so did I. But I also knew the danger. One compliment too many, one joke that landed harder than his, and I could feel the shift, the cold glance, the subtle exclusion, the reminder that I was still replaceable. So I learned balance. To agree without groveling, to joke without outshining, to nod without bowing. That was the hardest rule to master. Sometimes I caught myself wondering, did I even like these people, or did I just like being liked by them? There's a difference, but it's not one you can admit when your entire identity is stitched together by their acceptance. Without them, I was ordinary again. Invisible. And invisibility had become unbearable once I'd tasted the spotlight. It wasn't all strategy, though. Somewhere along the way, real moments seeped in. Late nights in cars with music playing softly, laughter that made my ribs hurt, confessions whispered on rooftops. Moments where, for a flicker of time, I forgot I was pretending, where the belonging felt real. And maybe that was the most dangerous part, because lies are easiest to carry when they've been mixed with truth. Still, the fear never left. Every joke I told, every story I shared, every outfit I chose, it all carried the weight of a test I couldn't afford to fail. My friendships were houses built on sand, and though the tide hadn't come yet, I knew it would. The thing about social climbing is that you never stop climbing. There's always a rung above you, always someone else to impress, always another rule to learn. And the higher you go, the greater the fall if someone notices the cracks in your mask. One night, I caught Jonah watching me too closely. We were at a party, music thudding through the floor, people pressed shoulder to shoulder. I had just told a story, something witty, something slightly fabricated, and the group had laughed. But Jonah hadn't. He just stared at me, a small smile tugging at his lips, the kind of smile that says, "I know." My throat went dry, but I forced myself to hold his gaze, to laugh along, to pretend I didn't feel my whole carefully constructed world teetering on the edge. Maybe he saw through me. Maybe he decided it didn't matter. Or maybe, and this possibility still keeps me up sometimes, maybe he admired it. Maybe he recognized the game, because he'd played it himself once upon a time. And so I remained. In the group, in the photos, in the laughter. But late at night, when the noise faded and I was alone, I couldn't shake the question, had I cheated my way into friendship, or had I simply revealed how everyone cheats, just a little, to belong? Because belonging, I realized, is never entirely honest. It's a performance, a bargain, an illusion we agree not to shatter. And I had only done what everyone else was already doing. I had just been willing to admit it to myself. The longer I stayed in the group, the harder it became to tell where the performance ended and where I actually began. At first, I thought I was just putting on a mask, adjusting myself so I could be accepted. But after months of smiling, laughing, nodding at the right times, echoing their tastes, and twisting my truths into more exciting versions, I started to wonder, what if the mask was becoming my face? There were days I'd catch myself speaking in their rhythms when no one was around, or humming songs I didn't even like, but had convinced myself I did. I'd open my closet and realize half the clothes I owned weren't chosen because I wanted them, but because they looked like something they would wear. I thought I was cheating the system, gaming the unspoken rules of belonging. But maybe the truth was darker. Maybe I was slowly erasing myself. The cracks showed in small, quiet ways. Once, during a casual conversation, someone mentioned a book they were reading, a novel everyone in the group seemed to adore. Without thinking, I chimed in with praise, describing scenes, even quoting a line. The problem was I'd never finished the book. I'd only skimmed summaries online. My voice came out too fast, too eager, and I saw it then. The flicker of doubt in their eyes, the pause that lasted a second too long. They laughed and moved on, but my chest tightened. For the rest of the night, I couldn't shake the fear that they knew. That at any moment, the curtain would be pulled back and the fraud would be revealed. Still, the climb continued. There were dinners, parties, endless photos where we posed like we'd known each other forever. Online, it looked effortless. The perfect group, smiling under golden lights, their arms linked with mine as though I had always been part of them. Strangers scrolling would never know the truth. They'd think I belonged. And maybe that was the cruelest part. It looked so real, even to me sometimes, that I almost believed it. But the thing about cheating is that it never feels like cheating when you're in the middle of it. It feels like survival. And survival demands sacrifice. Mine came in the form of old friends, people I had quietly let slip away because they didn't shine as brightly, didn't carry the same currency of social value. They noticed the change. A few of them asked, gently at first, why I didn't come around anymore. I lied, of course. Busy, I'd say. Life's been crazy. But the truth was, they couldn't give me what I craved: status, validation, the intoxicating rush of being seen. One night, months into this new life, I found myself standing on the edge of a rooftop with a group, drinks in hand, laughter spilling into the dark city. Jonah, always Jonah, the sun around which we orbited, was telling a story. Everyone was captivated. Everyone but me. I was watching him carefully, trying to decode the secret, the thing he had that I'd been chasing. And then, mid-laugh, he glanced at me again with that same knowing smile. The kind that said, I know exactly what you're doing. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't even cruel. If anything, it was a kind of respect. As though he recognized the hunger in me, the lengths I had gone, the rules I had learned without anyone teaching them. Maybe he had once done the same. Maybe all of them had. That realization should have comforted me, but it didn't. Instead, it hollowed me out. Because if everyone was faking, if everyone was cheating in their own way, then what did belonging even mean? Were we friends, or just co-conspirators in a carefully constructed illusion? I thought about leaving sometimes, about stepping away from the game, about peeling off the mask and letting myself breathe. But the truth was, I didn't know if there was anything left underneath. Who was I outside of them? Would anyone even recognize me? Would I? And so I stayed. I laughed when I was supposed to, told stories polished into lies, played my part like an actor who'd forgotten there was a stage. Maybe that's the final unspoken rule of social climbing. Once you've cheated your way in, you can never really climb back out. Time changes everything, even the rhythm of pretending. In the beginning, every move I made was deliberate, a chess piece slid carefully across the board. But as months passed, I no longer needed to think so hard. The lies, the half-truths, the crafted laughter, they slipped out naturally. The mask had grown into my skin. I wasn't faking anymore. I was rehearsed. That terrified me. Because somewhere deep inside, there was still the memory of who I used to be, the quieter me, the one who read books for pleasure rather than strategy, who laughed without first glancing around to see if anyone else was laughing too, who didn't live under the constant threat of being unmasked. That person felt further and further away, like a ghost I used to know. The group kept expanding, as groups do. New faces appeared at parties, new personalities tried to squeeze into the circle. I hated them instantly. Not because they weren't likable, but because I saw myself in them. The hovering, the eager nodding, the subtle attempts to stitch themselves into the fabric. And worst of all, I saw how easily the others welcomed them, how quickly the spotlight shifted. My spot, the one I had fought so hard for, suddenly felt unstable. I had clawed my way in, but the climb never ended. There was always someone behind me, waiting for me to slip. One night, it nearly happened. A girl, I'll call her Clara, made a joke at a gathering. It was quick, sharp, and perfectly timed. The whole room roared. Even Jonah doubled over. I laughed too, but inside I felt a pang of dread. Because that was supposed to be my role, the witty one, the one who made the group laugh. It was the one piece of ground I thought I had secured. And in that moment, I felt it crumble. The fear made me reckless. I started pushing harder, telling bigger stories, inserting myself more forcefully, reaching for laughter even when silence would have been smarter. It worked, sometimes. Other times, it backfired. There were glances, quiet ones, exchanged when I spoke. A shift in the atmosphere, so subtle most people wouldn't notice, but I did. I lived for those shifts. I was addicted to reading the room. The breaking point came at another party, late in the night, when the drinks had loosened tongues and blurred boundaries. Someone, I don't even remember who, made a playful jab at me, a little joke about how I always seemed to know the right thing to say.
The group laughed.
It was harmless on the surface, but it cut deeper than they realized. Because it was true. Too true. For a split second, I saw the possibility. The curtain tearing open, the fraud revealed, the exile swift and merciless. I laughed along, of course. I always laughed. But inside, I felt myself splitting in two, one part clinging to the role I had created, the other screaming to be free of it. After that night, things were never the same. Not because they exposed me, they didn't. If anything, they kept including me, kept tagging me in photos, kept inviting me to dinners and trips. The machine kept turning. But I no longer felt like I was climbing. I felt trapped. Because here's the truth no one tells you about cheating your way into belonging. It works. It works so well you'll fool them. But the cruel twist is, you'll never stop wondering if you only fooled yourself. Even now, when I stand among them, smiling for the camera, laughter in my throat, I feel the question gnawing. Do they truly see me, or only the version I built for them? And worse, if they did see the real me, the unpolished, uncalculated me, would they stay? Or would I vanish back into invisibility, the outsider I was before I ever learned the unspoken rules? That's the final punishment of cheating your way in. You get what you wanted, but you never trust it. Every laugh, every smile, every hand on your shoulder carries a shadow of doubt. And no matter how high you climb, you'll always look down, waiting for the moment you fall.